Hello, everyone. This is Kevin Myers with Monarch Aesthetic Services, and we're here for another edition of Coffee with Kevin. And I'm very excited to welcome Justyn Dow. Justyn is with VITL. Welcome, Justyn. You're in Denver right now, so it's still morning for you?
Still morning. Yeah. Thanks so much for having me, Kevin.
Awesome. So Justyn here is going to talk, a hot topic in the market, kind of peptides, what's going on, where the market's going. Justyn, just to jump right into it, give us a little background of you, the company, kind of what you guys are doing, some exciting things.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to do so. So I've been in this health and wellness space for just over a decade. I started my career off with a nutritional supplement manufacturer that was exclusive to healthcare professionals. And so I really got started, consulting with physicians and in clinics across, multiple different segments of the health and wellness and aesthetic space. And really, over the last handful of years, 5 or 6 years, kind of started with the big boom with the GLPs and this, the popularity of those medications, I think really set the precedence, for what we are seeing now and what I expect to be kind of tremendous growth within this segment of the peptide space. These GLP-1 agonists are peptides themselves. So a lot of people may not understand that, but they are naturally occurring molecules in the body, signaling molecules. And so people have experienced or witnessed the benefits of those medications. And now, there are potentially thousands of other peptides that do similar things for the body or might have similar impacts, but just in other aspects of health, whether it's in, beauty and aesthetics or sleep or muscle mass or hormones, you name it, and we're really just starting to scratch the surface from a science community of what we know and what is in clinical use. But, I saw really this shift in the clinicians who I had been, previously working with, that themselves and all of their patients were more and more asking about peptides and what I was hearing, and if the companies that I was involved with were offering them. And so I've been fascinated with them. Myself, I'm kind of a human guinea pig, and I've always been just really fascinated by science and longevity, whether it's podcasts or other things, experimenting with things myself and researching. And so it's an exciting time for the medical community. Again, like just scratching the surface on what we know in clinical application. There's maybe about 24 of these peptides that are commonly used, much of them, used off label or through kind of like over the counter channels, just because there's very little availability for them within like the regulated pharmaceutical channels, just because a lot of these things are not approved by the FDA. So there's a lot of questions, there's a lot of interest, there's a lot of intrigue and excitement, because if anybody's experienced them themselves or witnessed other people experimenting with some of these things, they know that there's these peptides can do really tremendous things in the body and have a really significant impact on patients.
Well, let's talk about that, because I think everyone, peptides is a terminology that everyone's kind of excited about, interested in, but I think a lot of them think that they're all, I don't want to say all, but I think a majority of the masses out there probably think that they're all GLP-1. So the question comes to, you talk about having a multitude. So obviously we know what the GLP-1s are, but what other kind of exciting areas that are peptides jumping into? Maybe you can give us a little glimpse in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd preface all of this with a disclaimer, if I
we'll
may.
Put it at the bottom, a little disclaimer at the bottom.
For educational purposes only, do your own homework and research and consult with your own legal representation, because that's certainly an aspect of this conversation, is the regulatory component to this. And so, there's very little regulation. And so there's a lot of questions for providers and in terms of what they can and can't do. So again, what I'm seeing other clinicians utilize in this space, there are a handful of predominant ones that most people have probably heard of. BPC 157 being probably at the top of that list. Peptides like CJC 1295 and ipamorelin. Muscle mass, when patients are in an extreme calorie deficit, you've got to be really smart about how you're eating. If you're a patient on a severe calorie deficit, you've got to be making sure you're getting a lot of protein. And it's hard for people, especially when their appetite is suppressed, to be getting enough protein, unless you're supplementing it in like a protein shake form where you can drink the liquid and kind of condense a bunch of protein into a single serving. And so there are these adjacent peptides that can help stimulate growth hormone and increase muscle mass, or allow you to, lift heavier or recover faster, which, promotes kind of that natural engine internally to build muscle mass. They're beauty peptides, a lot of things being used in the aesthetic space. I'm sure your audience is familiar with GHK copper. GHKCU is a peptide very commonly used. Some of those kind of components. Those are, I'd say, for the most part, the three kind of big, not only peptides, but categories of peptides where you've got kind of healing, regenerative, you've got muscle mass and recovery, and then you've got beauty and aesthetics. And I'd say those, are what we're seeing big trends in currently in popularity.
And it seems like since there's a big popularity, I guess the question that I always have, and I think a lot of our customers have, is how do you find out more? Where do you learn? Like what? Because if you go to the internet, there's a lot of good, bad, and the other end there. So, are there some resources? Is there a way to kind of get a better education so that people can learn a little bit more about what they're A, maybe offering their patients, and B, the benefits of where it fits into a practice?
Yeah, great question and great observation. I think where you get your information from is critically important, as we all know. But I think especially in a space like this, where there could be a lot of misinformation that's available to somebody. So yeah, some of the organizations that I respect, that I know and trust would be like A4M, the American Academy of Anti-Aging Medicine. They do a certification course on peptides, not very inexpensive. It's pretty costly to go through some of their modules on peptides, but incredibly scientific and evidence-based. The SEEDS Institute, SEEDS, would be a group that I would check out. I think his name is Dr. William Seeds, and he's really one of the pioneers, MD, who's been using these peptides in practice for a long time and has built some great certification and training courses. Elite NP is another group who I've heard really good things about their training programs as well. And we work at VITL with several practitioners who have gone through their training. So I'd say for the most part, those are the ones that I most commonly recommend. I know there are others and that there are more organizations emerging, but those would be the three that I feel really confidently in recommending exploring to get additional information on these peptides and how to use them. Because I think that's the other thing, dosing strategies and protocols. It's great just to learn about them, but then how do you use them clinically in practice, and what are some of the dosing protocols used? Those would be some great institutes to check out.
I'm sure, like everyone else on this, we get tons of emails and social media and everything under the sun talking about you need peptides and this and that. How do you know who to trust? But I mean, and I'm talking about the practitioner. So, every practitioner now, not everyone, but a lot of them are offering GLP-1s or offering other type of peptides, or they're kind of gone down this road. Are you looking for people that are certified in this? And how do we find that out? I mean, how do you figure out who's really knows what they're talking about?
Yeah, I mean, that's $1 million, maybe $1 billion question. At VITL, we're an e-prescribing engine for providers. And so just to provide a little bit of context is, we are a software that connects prescribers to pharmacies, and specifically specialty compounding pharmacies. And those are, really, I think that the most trusted source you can find for these peptides right now is in the pharmaceutical space, because they are regulated, because they are forced to follow certain stipulations and how they manufacture, sterile medications. So again, a lot of ambiguity within the peptide realm itself of like, what can we prescribe as providers? What does the FDA approve or not approve? And again, a lot of gray, and do your own homework and research. So a lot of these products are treated like over-the-counter products. So again, I came from the nutritional supplement space, very similarly to the nutritional supplement realm, where those molecules, vitamin D or omega-3 fish oil, like those are not FDA approved molecules, but they're still widely used and widely believed to be safe and effective, and there's clinical trials on them. And similarly, where you get those from matter, because there's no FDA regulatory body who holds those manufacturers accountable for what they're producing, what's going inside of a dietary supplement. The same is true for these peptides. And so I'm sure most people, that would be listening to this have been exposed to advertisements online, or maybe their patients come to them or their colleagues talk about, there's this big boom of what's called research use peptides, which is the way that these companies, I think, have to get around some of the regulatory hurdles for them, is saying, these peptides are for research purposes only. Some of them say not for human consumption on them. And so it's intimidating, I think, and scary for providers to say, am I really going to recommend a product that right on the label says not for human consumption? What happens if a patient has a reaction and right there on the label, they were informed or disclosed that they shouldn't be taking this? And so really, there are reputable research use peptide manufacturers out there. Absolutely. I've used them personally as a consumer, happy to make some recommendations offline. And I'm sure, if you want to give my contact information away, to the audience, would be happy to make a few recommendations from what I've personally vetted and know to be reputable companies, because there are groups that do third-party tests and have their own internal testing standards and things that, I believe you can trust. As a company, VITL has predominantly trusted compounding pharmacies. And so we partner with several compounding pharmacies across the United States that manufacture these products. Although not FDA approved drugs, they're manufacturing these peptides to pharmaceutical grade standards, under the same standards that the FDA holds them accountable for manufacturing other medications like testosterone or progesterone, or you name the compound. They're manufacturing these peptides to the same standards. So quality of the raw materials, sterility testing, stability testing, purity and potency testing. So you can have confidence getting it from a pharmacy, knowing, hey, these medications are produced to the same standards as all the other medications that come through the facility. They're board of pharmacy licensed and inspected and audited, again, third-party tested, so we can provide documentation on where they come from and what's there. And so that should give providers a lot of faith and confidence in knowing, if I'm going to want to recommend or prescribe a product like this, getting it from a compounding pharmacy is the safest route. And so we do have options on our platform in pharmacies that providers can choose from that do offer some of these types of medications.
Well, it sounds like you guys have done the vetting for them. So you've kind of been in your knowledge base, understand the market, understand kind of what should be and what shouldn't be done. Is this kind of what VITL does? Is it kind of partners up with reputable, manufacturing pharmacies out there that can supply the product in an ethical way?
Absolutely. Yeah. At the core of what we do, we've coined the term e-prescribing as a marketplace. So the easiest thing to compare it to that everybody engages with is Amazon. So that's kind of what we've built for compounding pharmacy. Traditionally, what these providers are forced to engage with is a series of one-to-one relationships with all the pharmacies that they work with. And that means a different ordering system or a different prescriber portal or different login for every single pharmacy they work with, and really no great convenient way to compare pharmacies side by side and see who's got the best product or the exact product I'm looking for, and who can ship it to the state I'm trying to get it to, and who's got the best price on these medications. And so what we've did is built up a platform that allows them to log into a singular provider portal. It integrates through the tech stack within their practice, so the EMR or the CRM that they operate in, so that they can just very quickly, efficiently prescribe to any one of the pharmacies on our platform from one home, and they can track orders. Patients have visibility into tracking status, dosing instructions, etc. But that's also what we've done then, is curate this pharmacy network of highly trusted pharmacies. So all 503A and B FDA registered pharmacies, all licensed and inspected by their local state board of pharmacies, all third-party tested with certificates of analysis available upon request for all the medications. And then from there, we also qualify these pharmacies based on their customer service. So how quickly do they fulfill orders? How good are they in terms of making things right when something goes wrong? And what kind of coverage do they have across the United States, right? So we try to partner with pharmacies who can fulfill to the vast majority of the US, so that providers have confidence knowing that they've got access and coverage over all the states where they're trying to get medications into.
So, okay, now let's say I'm a practitioner. I go out there and I say, you know what? I'm very interested in doing this. My patients are asking me for it. I think there's a market to help my patients out there. What's the next step? They call you guys, they go online, they're like checking you out. Because again, I think there's also, as I said before, to me, it seems like there's a lot of misinformation about peptides in the market, and where it's kind of a little bit of a wild west. And so trying to find the reputable group as yourself to kind of do that. What's the next step? If I want to get into it, I don't know anything about it, but I want to get into it. What do I do?
Well, thanks for asking, Kevin. You can go to vitalrx.com. It's VITLRX.com is our website. Check us out. We're a completely free tool for prescribers. There's no contract. There's no hidden cost. There's no monthly obligation. You come into our platform, there's a sign up button. We credential you across our pharmacy network. And then you get instant access to all the pharmacies that we partner with. And we're constantly evaluating new pharmacies and bringing new additions into the platform so that you're constantly having access to some of the most reputable and well-known compounding pharmacies across the United States. So start there. Come in, register for an account. You have access to the pharmacies who are manufacturing, everything from GLPs to the peptides that I mentioned, NAD, glutathione, IV supplies. You can order, clinic stock. You can order patient-specific testosterone, hormones, anything that a compounding pharmacy manufactures. I think we've got over 2,000 individual medications available on our platform. So come in there, start there. I'm the head of sales with the company. We'll make an introduction. If you've got questions and you want to talk directly to the pharmacists at these pharmacies who are manufacturing the products, we can put you in touch directly with those pharmacies. Certainly, we've got over 500 clinics who prescribe through our platform. So I'm having these conversations daily. We've got, dosing protocols and some things like that from other clinics and prescribers, as well as the pharmacies. So we can provide some guidance for you if you're curious about these peptides, and at least have an initial conversation, get you pointed in the right direction, as well as facilitate introductions to other practitioners and pharmacists that can provide more clinical insight if you've got needs.
Okay, so now let's say we signed up, went online, had a great time, signed you up. Now, I got patients, coming in the door. Now I got to figure out, what am I going to prescribe? So I know you gave me some of these other resources, but you guys offer resources, you offer ideas, some training, whatever, to kind of help practitioners be good at what they do, because really also you want this whole market to grow, and the whole market grows only if we have good practitioners, or practitioners with a good knowledge base to be able to offer their patients what they need.
Yeah, absolutely. So on the roadmap for 2026 is really expanding out the clinical resources available on our platform. So, I absolutely see this where you've got this educational library. You come into your VITL platform, you go into the educational library, and you can watch recorded webinars, you can download dosing protocols, you can be exposed and directly access some of these credible and reputable training institutions that I mentioned previously. We certainly have some things, like I said, that we can provide resources for clinicians. If you come in and have a conversation with us, we can get you connected with either the pharmacies or other providers, and certainly have some dosing recommendations and guidance for clinicians who just want kind of an introduction into some of these peptides and medications.
All right, so we figured out how to do it. We figured out where to go, the reputable source. You give me all the do's, give me the don'ts. As I've said, I've talked to a lot of our customer base, and they're being hit up with emails, social media, DMs all across the board, even sales reps walking in with who knows what and where from. So what are the don'ts? Like what does a practice need to stay away from or really look for as the red flag to protect themselves?
Yeah, it's a phenomenal question and a very important one. I think don't do business with somebody that you don't feel like you can trust. I think that's obvious across, whatever segment, but especially in some of these molecules. And I don't want to say don't trust any research use peptide manufacturer, because again, there are some good ones out there. However, I think you can cover much of your risk in any potential liability in engaging with these medications by doing business with a compounding pharmacy. So I would say, don't get tempted to use a research only peptide manufacturer because the price might be 30-40% less than going through a reputable pharmacy, or because you can order all of these medications without any kind of patient specificity to them, so you can stock them in your clinic. It's easy and it's cost effective, But it also does potentially leave you open to liability if if something goes wrong with the patient, or they have an adverse reaction. So I would say, first and foremost, don't get tempted by a cheap, inexpensive product. I think the mantra of "you get what you pay for" is true everywhere, but especially in unregulated industries where anybody can make whatever they want. I would say, also just make sure you're fully informed, and don't prescribe things, or don't recommend things that you're not really comfortable with. There's so much information out there. I mean, you can just jump on YouTube, or jump on Apple Podcasts and Google, find some resources. You don't have to go spend $2,000 for a peptide training course, but you can go get information. Peter Attia, Andrew Huberman, some of these medical podcasts who have huge followings.
I believe you should, trust, but you should also verify. And you should really make sure that who you're partnering up with has the knowledge base, the backend base. And it sounds like, again, from everything that you're talking about, you guys have a tremendous knowledge resource. You've vetted out, you've made it a little simpler, I guess, to navigate these very muddy waters out there in the marketplace. They're really going out there pushing the right message and doing the right thing for the patient. I agree. I think going cheap is always a bad way to go across the board, because I think nothing good comes out of it. Okay, so the other question now comes into money. How do you make money with this? Is this a good return on investment for most practices? Kind of what do you see with an average practice? Because unless you're a billionaire just like you to have fun on the weekends running a practice, I mean, what do you do to make money with this?
Yeah, I mean, there is a immense opportunity here. And again, we're just scratching the surface as more and more people start to become aware of these types of peptides. Again, GLPs put them on the maps. I can't recall what the specific statistic is, but it's somewhere in the next couple of years, 1 in 5 Americans will directly experience one of these GLPs. But it's put weekly injectable on the map. Like, I think 5 years ago, if you would have talked about injecting yourself at home with a medication, the vast majority of the population would say, "What are you talking about? Like, are we talking anabolic steroids, like some underground, kind of nefarious treatment here?" And now I think it's been so normalized because most people have been around it, experienced it, or seen it through their friends or family. And there's immense opportunity. Again, I think everybody is chasing kind of that fountain of youth. They want to look better, feel better, think better, sleep better. And that's really what these peptides are unlocking for people. They're perfect adjuncts to the services that, your clients are providing, right? In the aesthetic space, where it's not just about looking good on the outside, but feeling good on the inside. These are the medications that are, revolutionizing what is possible, and they're perfect adjuncts. Somebody comes in for a one-time cosmetic procedure or service, and you've got the opportunity to upsell them into kind of a wellness service that becomes residual income for this business. Rarely is this like a one and done. Patients typically stay on these medications, these peptides, for several months, and they may cycle on and off of them periodically. I would say on an average, a peptide program will probably generate anywhere from $200 to $300 per month in revenue to a clinic, with operating margin at somewhere between 50-60% on that. Again, a lot of opportunity. And again, it's really just starting to emerge. So I'd highly encourage anybody out there that's curious just to start doing some investigation and get into it now, because there is going to be, and I'm sure most of the audience is familiar, of patients coming in and saying, "Oh, hey, I heard about BPC 157. Like, what do you know about it? Can I get it here?" And so, I think, jump on the train now, because it's going to really generate a lot of momentum and will be a true difference maker for your practice, and unlocking a revenue stream that you may be completely missing out at the moment.
You've given us a great overview of what peptides are and really kind of what the market is. And we know there's a lot of stumbling blocks. So I'd recommend, anyone out there that's looking to get into it, use some of the resources. You've heard about some of the meetings out there, some certifications you can do. Also, find a trusted partner out there. I'd highly recommend go on, check them out, get some information, the better educated you are, the better we all are. And that's our biggest motto at Monarch Tech Services, that we want our customer base to be as highly educated, because it's just going to make everyone better in the market space and also for the treatments for the patients. So last parting thing, any idea that we didn't cover before we jump off this thing?
No, I don't think so. I mean, we covered a lot of ground. Please don't hesitate to reach out. Happy to just be a free resource for you. Again, no strings attached. And if I can help provide some information and some guidance on how to use these things, I know it may be intimidating, but I would say there are tens of thousands of practitioners nationwide utilizing these molecules. So this is by no means still, this taboo form of medicine that you should be hesitant in exploring. So if you're curious, please reach out. I'd love to have a conversation with you and try to become a difference maker in your practice.
Well, maybe one last thing before you go. Where will you be next? Are you guys at any trade shows, any events? Like, is there something that if someone is out about, they can meet up with you guys?
We will be at the A4M World Congress show in Las Vegas first half of December, and then we'll be pretty involved in the conference trade show circuit in 2026 as well. I don't have the full lineup in front of me, but A4M is a really popular one in Las Vegas. So if anyone is there, we will be there. Would love to have a conversation. Come by the booth, check out our technology, give you a demo of how everything works. That would be kind of an initial step here as well. You can go to our website, request a demo. We'll do a quick little 15-minute one-on-one, show you how our platform works, and see if it could be useful for you.
Awesome. Well, I think I might see you at the A4M. And again, everyone look for Justyn Dow at VITL RX at A4M. And again, Justyn, appreciate you giving your knowledge. Obviously, you're very intelligent. You know exactly what you're talking about when it comes out to peptide. So I might be personally giving you a call to see if you can give me a little guidance out there so I can learn a little bit more.
Be happy to help. Yeah. Thanks so much for having me, Kevin.
Everyone, thank you again for coming on another edition of Coffee with Kevin. We're always trying to bring cutting edge new ideas to the market space, and there's been a lot of questions, and I think this is a burgeoning market that everyone needs to really kind of start keeping an eye on. Whether you're involved or not, you should definitely understand and educate yourself as much as possible just to know what the market is and where the market's going to go. So thank you all for joining us. And Justyn, again, thank you very much for getting on and giving us your knowledge base. And we look forward to seeing you soon.
Appreciate it. Thanks so much.